Hello, this is Tony Heller from RealClimateScience.com, setting the record straight about climate. Parts of Australia are having very hot weather right now, and a few days ago I started seeing a lot of news articles like this. Washington Post, Australia could see its hottest day on record this week, fueling bushfire crisis. And the Australian Bureau of Meteorology made it official today. Preliminary results suggest that the 17th of December was Australia's hottest day on record at 40.9 degrees Celsius, with the average maximum across the country as a whole exceeding the previous record of 40.3 Celsius on the 7th of January 2013. Note that the weather girl is cleverly standing in front of Eastern Australia. The temperature in Sydney on December 17th was 75 degrees Fahrenheit or 24 degrees Celsius. Nobody's going to consider those sort of temperatures to be record heat, so it should be no surprise that they placed her in front of Eastern Australia. When they say it was the hottest day on record, what exactly does that mean? When do their records begin? I've been spending a lot of time recently looking at the daily temperature records for Australia in the Global Historical Climatology Network from NOAA, and I've identified about 25 locations in Australia with good long-term daily temperature records. These locations are marked as green dots on this map. Note that essentially all of them are located in eastern Australia, and just about all of them are located in southeast Australia. The vast majority of the high-quality long-term temperature data in Australia is located right where they had the weather girl blocking the picture. And it wasn't particularly hot over there on December 17th. So when BOM says it was the hottest day on record, what exactly does that mean? Does that mean going back 20 years, 30 years, 50 years? It certainly doesn't mean going back 100 years. There isn't enough high-quality temperature data going back 100 years in most of Australia to make that sort of determination. Here's an article from the Sydney Morning Herald on January 13, 1939. Look at these incredible temperatures they were reporting in New South Wales. 127 degrees, 124 degrees, 118 degrees, 120 degrees. It was much hotter then than it has been this week. This map, based on the officially recorded maximum temperatures throughout New South Wales on Wednesday, can be taken as typical of any day during the last fortnight. The heavily shaded portion shows the large proportion of the state that experienced temperatures exceeding 110 degrees. The registration of 124 degrees at White Cliffs was the highest recorded in New South Wales since the record for the state, 125 degrees, was made at Bourke in 1909. These temperatures were much hotter than anything that's been reported this year. And the article said that these incredibly hot temperatures were typical of any day during the past 2 weeks. So it's becoming pretty clear that the claim of the hottest day on record on December 17th this year is just fake news. Let's read the last sentence again. The registration of 124 degrees at White Cliffs was the highest recorded in New South Wales since the record for the state, 125 degrees, was made at Bourke in 1909. So the official highest temperature in New South Wales was 125 degrees in 1909. But if we look at the Bureau of Meteorology's temperature graph for Australia, you can see they begin in 1910. They hide all of the extremely hot weather which occurred prior to then. In a few minutes, we're going to look at some of the extremely hot temperatures which the BOM is hiding prior to 1910. But first, we're going to look at the 1930s. Here's an official publication from the Department of Agriculture of New South Wales dated in 1934. They show the record temperature at Bourke as being 127 degrees. That is 24 degrees warmer than the temperature at Bourke on December 17th. So the Bureau of Meteorology is claiming that Australia's hottest day on record came on a day when Bourke was 24 degrees below their all-time record maximum. That doesn't sound very credible to me. Now let's look at an Australian heat wave which occurred 80 years ago. On 37 consecutive days from December 17, 1938 to January 22, 1939, the temperature at Bourke passed the 100 degrees mark. Post office records show. The previous state record of 24 days over 100 degrees was established in 1896. On 11 days, December 18th to 28th, the average maximum was 110 degrees. The average maximum from January 9th to 16th was 116 degrees, and over the 37 days it was an average of 109 degrees. Here's a graph of temperatures at Bourke during that 37-day heat wave. You can see that it was incredibly hot with temperatures getting up to 119 degrees. And here's the long-term temperature forecast for Bourke, showing the hottest temperature in the forecast of 114 degrees. This graph shows the 1938 and 1939 heatwave temperatures at Bourke in red and the current forecast in blue. Nothing in these blue temperatures supports the idea that Australia is having record heat right now. The Bureau of Meteorology hides all the temperatures before 1910, but there was a lot of extremely hot weather in Australia during that time. Tuesday, December 18, 1900, heat and fires. Sydney had a maximum temperature of 104 degrees. Very high temperatures ruled throughout the colony, and the continued dry, hot weather is having a disastrous effect on the crops. The temperatures being reported were much hotter than this year. And it wasn't just extremely hot, but there was also numerous bushfires reported from various parts of the colony. Now we're going to look at the heat wave of January 1896, which was probably the hottest month on record in Southeast Australia. 1896 was also extremely hot in the United States and in Europe, and Mark Twain said, "I guess we are so near our destination that it heats through the partition." Here's how the New York Times reported that heat wave. Hottest of hot waves on record. How it struck sweltering New South Wales in January last. Talking about hot weather, one day last January the mercury at Adelaide, Australia marked 127 degrees in the shade. And then they listed some temperatures for New South Wales for Thursday, January 23rd. 121 degrees, 120 degrees, 119 degrees. Here's a close-up of that New York Times article. 122 degrees, 121 degrees. Temperatures were much hotter than they have been this year. The New York Times article also reported a remarkable sequence of hot temperatures recorded in proper shade along the Darling River. So I've plotted those 1896 temperatures reported by the New York Times on top of the Bourke temperatures from 1938 and 1939 and the Bourke temperatures from this year. These 1896 temperatures shown in purple were incredibly hot. Let's read some more from the 1896 New York Times article. Even these readings, awful as they may seem, convey but an imperfect idea of the terrors of the heat in interior Australia. The death roll has been frightful, and the steadiness of the heat aggravates the mortality, as even the night gives no relief. It is probable that fully 500 deaths have resulted from this January heat wave in this colony alone. Sydney, with her 420,000 people, with her ponderous piles of heated masonry, her narrow streets, and her 108.5 degrees in the shade at the observatory and 115 degrees in the shade at other places, has really been a refuge for the people of the seething, broiling interior. So it was 108 degrees in Sydney, and people came from the interior to cool down. Remember that Sydney was 75 degrees this year on the official hottest day on record, which was 33 degrees cooler than 1896. Not only do people succumb to this overpowering weather and cattle die by the thousands, but the dead bodies of wild animals such as kangaroos, rabbits, and dingoes lie scattered around everywhere, and the brilliantly plumed birds, parrots, innumerable, and other noted songsters drop dead from the trees, this heat being more fatal than a sportsman's shot. Here's another article from Australia from 1896 describing temperatures well over 120 degrees. This year's claimed record heat wasn't even particularly hot in Southeast Australia. Now let's look at Marble Bar in the northwest. The temperature there on the alleged hottest day on record was 43 degrees Celsius. The Australian Bureau of Meteorology used to have this web page up, but they've since deleted it. It describes the world's record heat wave of 1923 through 1924 at Marble Bar. From October 1923 to April 1924, Marble Bar had 160 consecutive days over 100 degrees Fahrenheit or 38 degrees Celsius. During that heat wave, they had numerous days over 45 degrees Celsius and one day which reached 48. But the temperature at Marble Bar on BOM's official hottest day was only 43 degrees. So we know now that Southeast Australia definitely did not have record heat on December 17th, and neither did Northwest Australia. The claims of record heat are due to areas where there's very little high-quality long-term daily temperature data. It seems pretty clear that these claims of hottest day on record on December 17th are nothing but propaganda. I'm going to finish this up with one more hot day, February 6, 1851, commonly known as Black Thursday. At 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning, Melbourne was 117 degrees in the shade. Half of the state of Victoria burned up that day. Bushfires raged across hundreds of miles of country. sweeping along with almost the rapidity of lightning and destroying nearly instantaneously men, women, and children, crops and homesteads, fences and gardens, and vast quantities of cattle, sheep, horses, pigs, and fowls. Australia has always had incredibly hot weather and very bad bushfires, and they have nothing to do with carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere. Summarizing again what I've covered, there is very little evidence to support the Bureau of Meteorology's claim that December 17th was the hottest day on record in Australia. Just more propaganda, which we've come to expect from global warming alarmists. The reality is that there's not enough long-term, high-quality temperature data in Australia to make that sort of determination. In the parts of Australia where there is good, high-quality, long-term temperature data, they weren't even close to a record temperature. Visit Toto on the web at realclimatescience.com. He's been pulling back the curtain on junk science and propaganda for a long time.